This child's image was used to demonstrate the brutality of the Syrian government's campaign to retake militant-held East Aleppo last fall. Who can forget when the sweet, helpless face of Omran Daqneesh moved one CNN host to make this emotional appeal?
What strikes me is we shed tears, but there are no tears here. He doesn't cry once. That little boy is in total shock. He's stunned inside his home one moment, and the next, lost in the flurry and the fury of war and chaos. At least 3 people were killed by this bomb in this neighborhood. This is Omran. He's alive. We wanted you to know.
Yes, Omran is alive, and unfortunately for the media once captivated by his likeness, his family is talking. Because like many civilians trapped in Aleppo as a horrific battle between insurgents and the government rolled on, they stayed loyal to Syrian President Assad. In an interview at the home his family has returned to, Omran's father says the way the media used his son's tragedy was propaganda.
However, it seems like Amanpour may have stuck her neck out a bit too far now after the picture of Omran Daqneesh, little Omran, was paraded all across Western TV screens. Amanpour attacked Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov with the image in order to browbeat him and claim that Russia was supporting a butcher in Syria who's killing civilians with abandon.
Omran Daqneesh, she's 5 years old. That is a war crime, sir.
Amanpour challenged to interview Aleppo Boy she exploited for war propaganda. This comes via Brandon Turbeville on Activist Post. Hyped and heaped with praise from establishment corners all across Troll America, the heavily opinionated Christiane Amanpour has long promoted the line of the military-industrial complex whenever its methods come in the form of humanitarian love bombs and war under the guise of responsibility to protect, R2P, as we've talked about here many times. Amanpour has long been a successful propagandist for the establishment, particularly when it came to Syria.
I can barely contain myself at this point. How many more times do we have to say that weapons of mass destruction were used? And as bad as it is to decapitate somebody, it is by no means equal. We can't use this false moral equivalence about what's going on right now. They tried to do it in the Second World War, they tried to do it in Bosnia, they tried to do it in Rwanda, and they're trying to do it now. There is no moral equivalence. And the president, wait just a second. Excuse me. The President of the United States and the most moral country in the world, based on the most moral principles in the world.
So with the additional steps I ordered last month, we're speeding up training of ISIL forces, including volunteers from Sunni tribes in Anbar province.
At least that's the fundamental principle that the United States rests on. Cannot allow this to go unchecked. Cannot allow this to go unchecked.
Christiane Amanpour is a longtime CFR crony. Her hubby, James P. Rubin, is a card-carrying member of the Council on Foreign Relations. He also served in the State Department during the Bill Clinton administration, and while at Columbia, Rubin was a student of Zalmay Khalilzad, later U.S. ambassador to Afghanistan, Iraq, and the United Nations under President George W. Bush.
RT is challenging CNN journalist Christiane Amanpour to travel to the Syrian city of Aleppo with one of our crews to interview Omran Daqneesh. He's the little boy you'll remember who came to symbolize the country's suffering last August after photos emerged of him sitting ashen-faced and shell-shocked in the back of an ambulance. Our editor-in-chief, Margarita Simonian, threw down the gauntlet after RT exposed how his story had been misrepresented by many outlets. The Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson also said earlier that she believes the CNN correspondent was guilty of using Omran's story to manipulate public opinion.
The boy was really wounded, but all the situation surrounding him was completely distorted by the alleged human rights activists and journalists, including Amanpour. She bluntly manipulated public opinion. If she started this story, and she even wasn't idle to come to Moscow and show the picture to Lavrov, maybe she'll have enough courage and journalist ethics and conscience to end it, to go to Aleppo and find the boy's family and make an honest interview.
This is great to see CFR Amanpour being called out on her disgusting use of this propaganda, and it is nothing other than propaganda because, of course, these prostitutes do not care about the children that they cry their crocodile tears over. They are simply PR stunts that are used to make political points, and this puts that into crystal clear perspective. And of course, it was Amanpour dramatically confronting Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, with the picture of Omran. "This is a war crime, sir." That was one of the iconic moments of the whole Aleppo nonsense of last year, with all of the lies that were flying around about it. And of course, the implication being that it was Russian bombs that did this, when in fact even the Western MSM couldn't decide if it was Syrian government or maybe it was the Russians. We don't really know what strike it was, but anyway, that's not important. Whereas, of course, Omran's father, the person who's actually affected by this, says that he didn't hear any planes. He didn't know if it was an airplane at all. It could have been the rebels, those valiant, wonderful rebels who were, of course, just the innocent people in all of this, right? Wait, no, they're the terrorists that terrorized the people of Aleppo for many, many months, with the active complicity of the MSM.
In terms of our support of opposition groups inside of Syria, I made very clear early on that the United States couldn't impose a military solution on Syria either, but that it was in our interest to make sure that we were engaged with moderate opposition inside of Syria, because eventually Syria will fall. The Assad regime will fall. And we have to have somebody who we're working with that we can help pick up the pieces and stitch back together a cohesive, coherent country. And so we will continue to support them.
Now that little Omran and his dad have resurfaced, Amanpour's propaganda falls all apart. The boy's father has revealed that the photo was nothing more than a clever photo op taken by the Academy Award-winning, Oscar-winning White Helmets, of course, for the purpose of demonizing the Syrian government.
When we spoke to Omran's father, he told us that the White Helmets group, who portray themselves as a brigade of rescuers, first aid responders, they were busy filming and taking photos of the boy instead of giving him first aid. And also they ignored requests by Omran's father to examine the site of the strike and the rubble. Here's more of what Mohammed told us.
I am Mohammed Khair Daqneesh, the father of Omran. We have been in so much turmoil in eastern Aleppo because of the insurgents and because of the issues they made propaganda about. The boy, thank God, is all right. He had minor injury. We were sitting in our house like this. Omran and I were spending time having fun on our cell phones. Then the strike happened. I was busy saving my family while the insurgents seized the opportunity and filmed my family when they were escaping the house for the sake of propaganda. Thank God the situation is now improving. The army is advancing and has liberated the area so we could return to our homes.
You might think this perspective, Omran's father speaking for himself, would cause some reflection in the media. But somehow, reporters like the one we watched earlier have stayed silent, apparently now uninterested in this Syrian voice.
Of course, Christiane Amanpour cannot respond to this. She cannot acknowledge this story at all, because there is no way to spin this. You cannot cry crocodile tears over a boy and then refuse to talk to him or his family or report on what they think about this event that these prostitutes were using as propaganda. So Christiane Amanpour, she cannot address this. She will never, I guarantee you, she will never address this unless, you have some actual citizen journalists, confronting these prostitutes on the street or wherever you find them, sticking a camera in their face and demanding answers about this. That's what I'd love to see. I'd love to see everyone tweeting and emailing and making an issue out of this story. Again, not because I think Christiane Amanpour will ever say anything about it, but because we need to show the public that these prostitutes who cry these crocodile tears do not care about the children that they're using as PR props in their propaganda campaigns.
So we came here and settled, and it was good. There was no disturbance at all. And then he was back in the media. They talk about him, the person who photographed him. They talk about him as if he is theirs. This is my son. All I want is for them to leave him alone.
Omran's father said insurgents in Aleppo who were backed by the United States intimidated his family, and that he's refused offers to do interviews attacking the government, even in exchange for money. Yet, according to the media, Omran was proof of U.S. inaction in Syria.
His name is Omran Daqneesh. He's a little boy who survived a bombing. What's worse, not knowing about Aleppo or knowing all along and not acting on it?
I'm going to tell you a tale of two Syrian boys, Omran and Abdullah. One boy, Omran, is alive and well today. The other, Abdullah, had his head slowly sliced off with a blunt knife by the US armed and trained FSA rebels.
So, we could have had something special. When the so-called rebels came to us, we should have said, fellas, we're going to help you. We want 50% of your oil. They would have said, thank you very much. We have a deal. Write it down. Sign it. We have a deal. We would have been a rich nation again.
But it was Omran's dust-covered face which appeared in every headline and front page of every mainstream media outlet around the world, while Abdullah's face was concealed and his story covered up. Just compare the BBC's coverage of the two incidents. Omran's photo is in the center and clearly visible. In the other case, the BBC actually cropped out Abdullah's face completely in the photo that they used. The BBC's headline was also an attempt to justify the beheading of a child. The handful of articles that did cover the child's beheading also censored the child's face from their front cover. Why is one child, one face, one name worth your attention, while the other child who was brutally murdered by CIA-trained terrorist group Harakat al-Zinki was not? The answer is obvious. NATO powers don't want their people to find out the nature of the terrorists that they support. Showing the world Abdullah's face would have been too damaging to the terrorist rebels and would have gone viral and out of control. Claims that the Omran image went viral on its own because of aesthetics are garbage. This little girl from West Aleppo was shelled by the rebels and had a similar photo taken of her dust-covered face, but the mainstream media did not use her image at all. They never told the world her name, Rim. The mainstream media decides what goes viral. They report approved stories in a coordinated manner. They decide not to tell you that their Al-Qaeda-linked rebels are shelling civilians and beheading kids. And here's the most shocking part of the story that you weren't told. The man who took the photo of dust-covered Omran in the ambulance, whose name is Mahmoud Ruslan, had taken a selfie with the same child beheaders. You can see how he is wearing the same blue shirt when he took Omran's photo and when he took a smiling selfie with child beheaders. The red arrows show the corresponding individuals. 1 minute he's crying crocodile tears over an injured child, and the next minute he's laughing it up with child beheaders. The selfie was posted on his Facebook and was taken 5 weeks after they beheaded the child, showing that he approves of the deed. He outright admitted to the Telegraph that he took the selfie with the child beheaders Harakat al-Zinki rebel group. But in his idiocy, he tried to justify this by claiming the 12-year-old Abdullah was actually a 19-year-old dwarf, as though that makes the beheading okay in his demented mind. In any case, his beheader friends disagree with his lame cover-up attempt.
هي أسرى لواء القدس اليوم ما ضل عنده زلم بعت لنا أطفال اليوم ما شاء الله ما ضل عنده زلم تكبير الله أكبر هاي كليبك يا بشار هاي كليبك أطفال لواء القدس الله أكبر.
In the humanitarian Mahmoud Ruslan's other Facebook posts, he encourages suicide bombings. One post reads, "With the suicide fighters from the land of battles and butchery, from Aleppo, we bring you tidings of impending joy." Another reads, thousands of suicide fighters and tens of booby traps are being prepared for the great battle in Aleppo. The first battle where I see men weeping because they can't participate, and in other posts he's seen wearing the colored headbands of the fighters he hangs out with, revealing that he too is likely a fighter. This is very interesting because Mahmoud Ruslan works for the AFP and is linked to the White Helmets group. His employers have a lot to answer to. Most importantly, the world must know the story behind 12-year-old Abdullah's beheading by the CIA-vetted, trained and armed rebel group Harakat al-Zinki. The CIA admit that they gave this group Tau missiles and trained them. To this date, the State Department will not confirm or deny whether they stopped funding them with US taxpayers' dollars. The world must learn about this.
As media watchdog group Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting makes clear, the narrative Omran's photo was used to further in that clip is dangerously false. And it's important, quote, to point out to Tapper the truth that keeps getting lost.
As we know, the dinosaur media is not a huge fan of subtext and context and going back and cleaning up and following up on stories.